So if you were living your true wealth, what does that look like?
I think for me it's about choice and time.
So I'm going to challenge you to go a little deeper on this. If I could give you, for example, an extra 10 hours a week of freedom, what would you do with it?
At this stage of my life, it's probably not maybe the answer you'd expect, but I think
there's that old saying, it's like money can't buy happiness, which is absolutely not true. I mean, it's about using the money to get
the means to get there. If you don't love what you do, then you're not going to be happy. You're not going to put in the effort. We did extremely well. Yeah. But it was a show behind the scenes, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, of course.
Let's bring in Grant White, portfolio manager,
an investment advisor.
Welcome to the Finding Your Wealth podcast.
What this whole podcast is about is redefining the conversation around wealth. The whole thing is absolutely a bit of a tire fire, in my opinion. I don't like drama, and this stock is surrounded by drama.
Josh, welcome to the Finding Your Wealth podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah.
This is like, I feel, this is a special episode to me because, we've been friends for some time now.
It's been a while.
Quite a few years.
Yeah.
I'm not shy about saying this. I'll say this on air, I'll say this off air. Like, you tend to tee off on me every once in a while, and I enjoy it. It's fun. And I do the same.
Likewise,
So this is fun. And actually, I was thinking about, as I was preparing for this, one of the first podcasts I ever did was with you on your podcast.
The Young Associates one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is a bit of a full circle moment for me.
It was in this room too. We did it
in this exact same room.
Yeah, that's right.
And now I'm excited to be on the other side of this, like essentially asking you the questions. Not that this is like hard knocks or anything like that, but so thank you. Thanks for coming
I appreciate it. And I remember when you originally had your idea to do this podcast, which was a bit ago, and talking about it. And so it's cool to see that you're now a number of episodes in, and super excited to be here and have a convo.
This is being the person that you are. You basically, like when I asked you to come on, you said to me, "It's like, am I even right for this? Am I like?" And I'm like, "No, you're the perfect person for this." And then the reality is, you are, and it's because we've had some great guests on. Everybody's been great, actually. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do though is reframe this conversation about wealth completely, and not to say like it's like, we want to talk to these like CEOs from like past and how they've done things and get their guidance and so on. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to have you on because you are you're a young entrepreneur. You're more closer to the beginning of this journey than you are towards the end of it, which is a good thing as well. But you've got a lot to share in terms of your own story. And so as much as you think like you might not be worthy of the Find Your Wealth podcast, I still feel
that way right now.
I'm so excited to have this because it's a different lens on this. Yeah. And I actually, when we talk about wealth, like we're not talking about money here. And that's the part that I'm really trying to change is that, my industry in wealth management is famous for having this conversation and trying to like teach people that wealth is defined by a number and a number in your bank account and all that stuff. And that is so far from the truth. And that's what we're really trying to change here. So before I get into that conversation and ask you a bunch of questions on that, but I always like to start off by asking people like where they feel their level of wealth is today. And for this, we'll just use the definition of wealth as freedom in your life, the ability to live your life and choose the way you spend your time, primarily and with people that you want to spend it with. So 10, it's a scale of 10. So 10 is you're mega free. You don't have any constraints on this whatsoever. Yeah. 1 is I'm severely constrained and you don't get to make any choices. So where in that
That's a good question.
And I'll tell you where I'm at afterwards, but yeah.
Where are you at?
Okay, I'll tell you where I'm at first. Okay, so the full meaning, actually, I'm on this journey, and I committed to this when I started this podcast, was, at the time, I actually can't remember where I said I was at, but probably a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Because I've started to achieve like more levels of freedom, but there's like, as we grow as entrepreneurs and have, different things, different demands of our time. And I have young kids as well. And it's like, my time is demanded by many different people. And I say that in a good way. I think that's good. But so my freedom level then was, let's call it a 6, I believe is what I said. I'd have to check my notes. Today, I would say I'm an 8.
Okay.
My goal.
So what changed?
Being more intentional. Yeah, and this is actually this is interesting because our last guest was Greg Hansen, who's a very intentional person about his time, and he's very process driven. I think he's a CPA, if I remember correctly. So he's a CPA brain, and so he's very process driven. I just got more intentional, and I started looking at it's like, and I'm still doing this today, because like, I went into this thinking that 10 is an unachievable goal. Basically, that was like, I wouldn't have said that, but that was in my head. Now I actually believe 10 is absolutely the goal, and I'm going to get to 10. I'm going to get to 10 faster than I thought I was going to as well. My goal now is, and this has recently just changed. I had a call this week with a business coach of mine, and my goal for 2025 is to get to that 10 actually.
So what
changed was I was more intentional. Yeah, like I started making decisions around like how I was spending time, and like less. I was starting to say no more to certain things.
I'm trying to learn to do that right now.
That's hard.
Yeah.
I started creating boundaries around it. I started blocking time. I started delegating more things that like should be delegated. A lot of that was related to value too, like how we're delivering value in the businesses. It's like I need to be delegating more if I'm going to live up to the experience I want to create.
So to get to 10, is it more of that in your mind for you, or is it other things as well that you have to change?
I think it's taking those steps further. Yeah, like I think like where I thought I was going to take 3 years to do certain things, I'm now decided I'm like, no, I need to accelerate that faster actually. Taking those next steps. There's going to be new things. There's going to be other steps I haven't thought of probably yet. Because like, as you go along, you're like, well, okay, now I need to do this. Now I need to do this. Like I'm on step 2 of maybe step 5 or 5 steps, right? But I think the biggest thing I've learned out of this process in front of like from talking to other people is that, being intentional about time is really important. I would have said I knew that ahead of time, but I didn't necessarily execute on a lot of that, or enough of that is probably more important. I'll tell you though, before having kids, like I thought I was using my time effectively, and I probably was more than most. But man, when you have kids, you really learn like how to like squeeze minutes in, and like find those extra minutes to do things, because it's like you kind of have to, and especially if you have like big ambitions and want to have big impacts in the world, like you kind of have to figure that out. So actually they've helped me to become better time managers, because the time with them is the most important, and then everything else you still have to do, so I think there's that. Okay. But one thing I did learn, and I'll just share this, this episode hasn't even been released yet, so by the time people are listening to this, they'll have heard it. But there's other aspects of that, feeling that freedom. It's being intentional with time is important, but living a fulfilled life is also important. So like having being responsible to your community and people in the community is really important. Your family should be the top of the list for me anyway. And I think for most, family, the community, and then there's other things that come about it depending on who the person is. So that's actually what I found is really interesting in a lot of people's journeys. But yeah, it's understanding what fulfills you in life, and being intentional about how you're spending your time to accomplish those things that fulfill you, or do more of the things that fulfill you, is kind of like the overarching, I think, definition or process of how I'm going about this. So yeah, today, let's call it an 8. I feel like an 8. I've made steps, but there's some big, I do think though, to go from 6 to 8 was hard. To go from 8 to 10 will be that much harder. Sure. Yeah, because it's like now you're getting into nitty gritty details of how to make it happen. But it's a process, and it's a fun process. So
it takes time.
Yeah,
it's not an overnight change.
No, and the reality is like the more you grow, and I think you would know this already, but like the more you have, like whether it's employees or whether it's like just people that you're responsible for, like they have demands on your time. Yeah, and that might mean those demands might come at the cost of your freedom in certain ways, or spending time doing things that you want to do at some point. So then it becomes like, okay, well, I need to have somebody else that can fulfill this role if I'm going to get back to this or whatever. So that's part of the exploration process. Like, hey, who do I need to surround myself in my team that can free me up to do the things I want to do and the high value things that I do. So yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, but you dodged the question completely there.
Well, and I thought we were getting away from it, but
that
was a good conversation.
On me. It was.
No,
okay, so where are you?
Well, it's funny because when you first asked the question, my brain went straight to like 4. But then as we started talking, I started thinking about it more and digesting about, that concept of time, freedom, and The one thing about me is I've always been well organized. I've always been, ever since I've been young, I've always enjoyed that organizational piece of staying on top of things and really planning my time intentionally.
Yeah.
It's become harder with business growth and everything, but at the same time, I think about it personally in terms of life stage where I'm at. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I have a lot of freedom in terms of flexibility with owning my company, my team being remote. So if I start to think about it from that perspective, I think I'm probably higher than a 4. I'd maybe go to more of that 6, maybe even pushing 7, because I do have a lot of flexibility with my time and space and choices that I can make. And it's funny, you mentioned learning to say no. It's something that's been top of mind for me recently too, and I've just started to. I just last week said no to 2 things that I probably couple months ago would have said yes to doing.
Yeah.
And so I think I don't know, so we'll split the difference and call it maybe a 5, 5.5. But it's funny how throughout listening to you explain that, my mind kind of started thinking more, and the more I now think about it, and you think about it in terms of choice, time, freedom, not just money or constrained by financial resources, then maybe it is a little bit higher. But the interesting thing I think for me is I see it, my initial gut almost says I'm a little bit higher, but it's going to go down before it then goes back up. Because part of me thinks like something like what you just talked about, as you're married, have kids, more life responsibilities too, while at the same time of building business, I think that might become harder. And so I don't know if maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, but I almost think it might be 1 step back before you go 2 steps forward, because you almost need to have that experience to realize what you have to be intentional about and how things have to change in order to
it's like a lot of
scale.
things. Like you don't know until you know.
Exactly.
Right? And so, I think like the kids are great teachers, and my kids certainly have been. And I don't necessarily think that my freedom went down because my time was constrained, but it forces intentionality for time, because like it starts moving faster. And anyway, so and everybody's experience is probably a little bit different on this, but what I found is that it becomes harder to do the things that were important to you. And I'll never forget, like my dad actually said this to me, because my concern when I say that very loosely, but my concern was when Sam was pregnant with JL, that I'm like, I didn't want to become somebody that was like my whole life became about my kids. And like I still wanted, like I have like big dreams and vision, and I wanted to make sure that was still a priority. And that is still the case. And what my dad said to me is like, what you will find, I think he said, what I think you will find is that those things become that much more important to you because of it. Because you're no longer just doing it for you. You're doing it for them, and you're doing it for the world that they're going to live in and inherit from you. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty impactful and powerful. So, and I can say honestly that has happened. But I don't know that it's necessarily of less freedom in my case anyway. Sure. I imagine a lot of people do though. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Could be. It'll be interesting. And I don't know, that's the futuristic perspective. Yeah. It's interesting. Like you said, we don't know what we don't know, and it's until those times or experiences happen.
So I think what I have learned though is the biggest thing in understanding and getting to that level of freedom, that wealth, is understanding what it means, what it is to you. And
I think that's to your point, the definition of what that is different to everyone too, right? And so really understanding before you can even almost evaluate where you are on that scale is actually understanding what it means to you, what's the definition is, because I don't think you can probably accurately rate where you're at unless you know what it means to you, right?
Yeah, nobody thinks about this.
No.
Nobody ever stops and looks at their life and be like, what would make me, like, if I could live my life every day as my happiest point. And so happiness is also like, it's like a wave. Like, it's not meant to be a flat line, because like, and it doesn't exist for anybody either. But like, so like this illusion of like, oh, I'll just be, in my ideal world, I'd be like living happy every day. It's like, no, that actually, it's not possible. And it frankly would take away from this anyway, so, but yeah, like, people don't think about what that ideal life looks like enough anyway. So, but I'm going to make you think about it.
Well, good. That's what we're here to do, right?
That's what we're here to do. So when you think about that, if you were living your true wealth, what does that look like?
I think for me, it's about choice and time. I think it's about having the flexibility to choose things you want to do fully and have the choice to be able to do things like, for example, you want to go away and take time or go on a vacation, or the choice to do something, you have the opportunity to make that choice.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think just by being intentional, as you kind of alluded to, having access to more time. We all want more time. Time is obviously a limited resource, or there's only so much of it in a day. But if we're able to intentionally make more time, I think then that allows you to, or gets you to that point where you then maybe have more choice or a little bit more freedom and wealth, I guess, from that perspective. So I think for me, I would say it's about choice and time, and then that time is what then is important to you to spend that time. It's with family, it's with friends, it's doing what you love with the people you enjoy most, and doing what makes you ultimately, I guess, happy.
Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you to go a little deeper on this, because I agree with you on all that stuff. What would you do? So what would you do more with, if you had more time? If I could give you, for example, an extra 10 hours a week of freedom, what would you do with it?
At this stage of my life, it's probably not maybe the answer you'd expect, but I think I'd work more. I love the work I do. I truly do.
No, that's totally
if I had 10 more hours in a day, I would probably work 9 more hours.
Yeah.
I truly love what I do. And I think, again, back to the stage of life, I'm not married, I don't have kids. I have that. That's probably a choice I would make, would be to work more. Now, in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that answer would probably be different.
Yeah.
But right now, I'd probably say, you know what, I would probably work more.
Yeah. But that's another good point. Is it's your definition today won't be your definition 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it is. I mean, it's going to change, and that's also kind of the point, right? There's different levels of freedom at different stages. So, again, the wealth industry has been terrible at trying to explain this, and you actually just touched on a really, I think, interesting point that I just read this book called Die with Zero. Really, really great book, great concept, which was basically there's a lot of people that are dying with lots of money and they've never enjoyed it. So the argument that the author's trying to make is that you worked too hard, if you will. You worked more than you needed to, and you didn't enjoy the money as much as you should have. Now, what he was clear on is and you to relate to this, it's not about saying you need to stop working. If you are loving what you do and you're passionate about it, it's meaningful, then you should continue to do that. But you should also just understand then, okay, I'm generating more money, and I should do something with that money versus dying with it someday down the road.
Yeah, what's the saying? If you don't fly first class, your kids will, right?
I think your mom said that.
I think my mom did say it.
Yeah.
She does, yeah. So about enjoying it. But now, do you think, though, that's a generational change?
100%.
That's come,
Yeah, I think we are all... our ideas around money are usually driven by our experiences as kids. And there's lots of good books on that, but they're and that's generational in what our previous generations went to, because our parents were raised by people that were growing up, our grandparents were Great Depression era, World Wars era kind of thing, right? And so that has a role. When I remember I was chatting with my grandmother about this. She lived in Saskatchewan, and she grew up during she was alive during the Depression, and that whole Dust Bowl era and so on and so forth. So they literally had nothing. They were lucky they had a farm, so they could actually still eat because they made their own food. But it was they had nothing, and that changes the way you think about money. When you have literally nothing, and then all of a sudden you start to get some, you never want to go back to having nothing, and so you in some cases anyway, you start hoarding money because you never want to have that life where you had nothing ever again, and then you teach your kids that, and then then the baby boomers and so on and so forth. So, and then we're now raised by the baby boomers who start to enjoy more money, but still had a different mentality than we do, and so on. So yeah, absolutely, I think it's totally a generational thing how we treat it. We're much more about experiences than
Totally.
Yeah, than probably our parents.
Yeah, I would agree.
Ever were,
I would agree.
And some people get it, but there's a lot of people who are socking away a lot of money, and that's essentially why this book Die with Zero was probably written in the first place, So, but yeah, I think people have glorified assets and things, and not spend enough time thinking about enjoyment of money, because at the end of the day, it is literally a medium of transfer. You should be transferring it and using it to buy time or buying experiences, basically. That's my view.
Good point. I like that. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's similar if you look at it in the sense of businesses and entrepreneurs, that concept of spending money, saving money, reinvesting money, growing a business. I think it's a very interesting parallel there too with, you look at how many more entrepreneurs there are nowadays too, and especially younger generation too. And I think that's a big piece of it too, of how younger people or younger professionals at least have that mindset of spending money and saving money too, I think, which is an interesting, maybe it's related, maybe it's not, but that comes to mind for me when I think about that.
Yeah. So what do you think, like, on that, what do you think about money for yourself? Like, I want to be careful on this because I think I would know the answer for you, but I don't want to like kind of give it away. I'd rather you just answer it. So what do you think about money? Like, what do you think about when you think about it? What do you think about when you think about making more money with you as your businesses continue to be successful and grow in success?
Yeah, I think about it, but for me, the work that I do is not about the money that comes with it or that could come with it. So I'm not motivated to make more money per se in terms of business wise, but of course as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're thinking about money almost every day to a degree, whether you want to or not, and you are making decisions based off of what those resources are or aren't. And so when I think about it, I think about it as access to some of those other things, like more time, more choice, more freedom, more growth, more opportunities. But that's what initially comes to mind when I think about it. But I try not to make decisions or within what I do that's motivated or driven by the financial output, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, that's what did you, is that what you thought I was gonna say?
Oh yeah. Like knowing you, I know that you're not like the money, like it's not a money goal. It's more of it's almost like a creation goal.
Yeah.
It's like
but yet it almost kind of is in your back of your mind, because the reality is, if you want to do a lot of the things you still want to do, you need money to do it.
No doubt.
So you're I guess you technically could say, okay, you're still driven by money, doing things, but it's maybe for the right reason. I don't know, but it's for a different reason. That's the funny thing with that whole conversation. Even when you talk about entrepreneurs and businesses that want to give back, and you sometimes see businesses being criticized for not giving back enough or whatnot, but at the end of the day, if it's a business, before you can give back, you still have to make money and take care of your employees and etc., right? And so that conversation, that I think theme of financial resources and money is it still drives a lot of what we do, but it's just, I guess, where in your mind, is it top of mind, is it kind of back of mind that it is while you're making your decisions, and how driven are those individual decisions based purely on those financial resources?
I think so yeah, I completely agree with you on this. I think the most unsuccessful entrepreneurs I've ever met have been the ones that have gone into it with a money goal.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because they're too focused on like, I'm going to sell my business, or I'm going to make millions, whatever it is. And it's like, you're in it for all the wrong reasons, which now already tells me that you're not actually committed to doing what is necessary to accomplish the goals that this business that you say you have. Because the goal isn't what the business is; it's about what you're going to sell it for down the road.
Right.
And like that's happened. Like everybody I talk to that has that kind of mindset, I'm like, I don't think this is going to go well, and in most cases it hasn't. Yeah. Some it has, but most cases
it's rare. It's more rare, especially nowadays, I would say too.
Yeah.
It's more rare.
Well, and I think people see through it too.
They do.
So I think about money almost like water, in that it's like necessary. We need it. It's a valuable resource, no doubt about it.
You can't live without it.
You can't live without it. It's something that it's renewable, so that you can go and find more of it. You have to work to find it. Yeah. And you might have to filter it and whatever, but you know what I mean? But you have to work for it. You have to work really hard for it. But it's a necessary thing, but it's actually not the goal at the end of the day. Right. It's just the things you need to help accomplish the goals. Yeah. But it does remind me of, I think there's that old saying, it's like money can't buy happiness, which is absolutely not true. I mean, money is actually required in most cases to buy happiness. You just need to understand it's like what the happiness is, and it's not about the money. It's about using the money to get the
means to get there. It's the car that's going to drive you to that
100%. Yeah. So like the conversations I've been having on this, and as I've explored this for myself, I would say I started exploring this for myself, I don't know, probably 10-ish years ago, and being like thinking about it more and getting more serious about it in the last 5 or 6 years after starting Endeavor. Was like, what actually is going to make me happy and all this? What's actually the purpose of all of this stuff? And when it comes to the money side of it, it's like the money became less and less and less important. It's like, even today, thinking about my kids, it's the money will help to provide opportunities and it helps to do things with them, but it's like, it's about the smiles it puts in their face. It's about the opportunities they're going to get in life. It's about, the businesses we can create and the impact on lives we can create, and we need a lot of money to do that, but that's what the goals are, not the money at the end
exactly.
of the day, So
no, and you said a word perfectly there, is the word impact, and that to me is what one of my biggest drivers are for the work that I do, and it's about impact. And I've started to keep that as my kind of key main word as a driver for even making decisions. So I talked about earlier saying no to things, and for me the question that I asked myself before I said no to those things is, can I make an impact with this? Is this going to make an impact or is it not? And that's become a bit of a driver for me in terms of how I make decisions, because I want to make sure that everything that I do spend my time on, that intentional piece, it is leading towards impact. And I try and keep, that's kind of the common theme through all the work, the volunteering that I do, is what impact are we making or am I making? And if there really isn't any, then why am I spending time doing it? Let's focus that energy and time on something different. Yeah. And so I think that word impact to me is a really important word, and that's been starting to drive a lot more of my decision-making process too.
Yeah, I love that. So where did that mentality that you have, where do you think that came from? Like, did you learn that over time? Was it built into you at an early age? Like,
I think it's my parents. I think, I mean, grew up in an entrepreneurial household. They were, both very entrepreneurial. And so definitely I think that was pretty much from a young age. That way I just kind of grew up with that mentality and learned that from parents, but also that over time too, with the entrepreneurial experiences too. I think a lot of those are learned experiences when you put yourself out there and you put yourself kind of in that grind mode and figure stuff out on your own. You learn a lot. And so I think it's a combination of both.
Have you learned from losses?
Yeah. Lots.
That's a loaded question because I know the answer is yes, but
yeah, there's lots.
Yeah.
There's lots. I mean, to a degree, we lose almost every day as entrepreneurs, whether it's small or big, or redefining or not. There's losses. I don't like to use the word failure because I think whether it's a challenge or a loss or whatever, it's a learning experience, and it happens to everyone. We're a human, we're especially entrepreneurs, but yeah, you learn from all of those experiences.
Yeah.
I
think I agree. Again, just like from my experience. If you're not failing, like either every day or very often, it means that you're not trying new things.
And I think it's funny because when you talk about or use that word failure, I think so many people think bankruptcy. They think like these massive extremes, whereas failures can be something extremely small, such as just not getting a sale you really wanted, right? Or a customer. Like it's in the business sense. So I think it's important a lot of the times to try and redefine that conversation of what failure or experiences or challenges are and that mindset, because I think so many people think that it's too extreme, and then that's why they're so scared to fail, is because they think it's just catastrophic.
Right.
Whereas no, we fail all the time, but it's even small little things that then just make us stronger, better, learn, and
if you're intentional about it. Yeah, a lot of people take a failure and it's like, oh, we're dead.
I'm done, even if it's a small failure.
Yeah. And then they stop, and I think that, I mean, I think this is a Bezos thing, but like, he's talking about like persistence as like the number one quality you need to be successful as an entrepreneur, and I think most entrepreneurs would probably say something similar.
Resilience,
to that, right?
persistence,
exactly. But yeah, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, and I think so. That was also a mentality that I had to switch through a number of years back, where I was thinking, like, I've always been or always tried to be an innovative thinker anyway.
Yeah.
And be open-minded to new ideas. Yeah, I'd like to think I am.
You are.
But that comes with also convincing your team around you sometimes to be like, hey, we're going to try a bunch of things and we're going to fail, and that's not the end. Like, that means like there's another iteration coming, or so on and so forth, because that's not the way most people I think.
No.
And when you're running businesses like we have, where there's employees and so on, you also need them to know it's like, hey, all good, and you kind of go through a failure with a smile on your face and be like, well, that didn't work,
Yeah, you got to be aligned. There's got to be that alignment with that vision and that mindset, for sure. Otherwise, how can you all move forward together and accomplish?
Well, I mean,
but that speaks to a leader's skill set. I think there's so many instances where that's not the case, where you go through something like that and the leader itself doesn't have that mindset, and then the culture impact on a team is almost more catastrophic, I would argue, than the actual failure that just went through. If you don't have a leader properly that can lead the team and reinforce that, hey, this is okay, we got more coming, we're gonna keep moving, you're then doomed for, I think, an even greater failure. So I think that speaks to like your leadership, for example, and the mindset of a lot of the successful leaders is it's exactly that. It's not the opposite. And that's what helps get teams through, especially when you have teams and people that don't always think that way, or they are scared to fail, which I think is really important.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, so you've learned this mentality. You've learned to put money, in particular, in its place through family and through your experiences with family. Are there any business experiences that you would say, like, because again, through the years, you've had how many businesses? Like 4 or 5?
Yeah, I don't even know. I've had a few.
Like at least 4 or 5.
At
least,
I'm aware of, right?
And maybe there's others that you tried and were less public about. I don't know.
Probably 4 or 5.
Okay. What have you learned from those businesses? Because some were successes, some are continuing to be successes, some didn't work out as well.
Yeah. What have I learned? That's a loaded question because I've learned a lot. I think the biggest thing that I've come to learn through all the businesses, whether the ones that have and are going really well compared to the ones that maybe weren't as successful or gone as well, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is a lot of just personal and professional development, and a lot of it is relationship building and building and being associated around people that are really kind of like-minded and supportive, and building that team around. I think I've learned so much about how to lead, how to bounce back from situations, that resilience mindset. And I think that's a big piece of what I've come to learn through all of those business endeavors and organizations. And it's really just about that, how you're responding to situations and taking what you did go through and applying it to what's next. And I think there's so many lessons along the way, whether it be managing people, leading people, building teams, making decisions. I think one of the things that I've gotten a lot better at throughout, I think if I look at all of those businesses, is just the purely act of making decisions, how you make decisions. I think before I would argue or look at myself and say I had a hard time making decisions, even simple decisions. But as things have progressed and as I've gone through those business ventures, one of the biggest things I've learned how to be more effective at decision making. I think that's a skill that I've gotten better at because of a lot of those things. So that would be one thing outside of just like kind of the personal and professional development that I, as an entrepreneur, have really taken away from a lot of those ventures. And obviously, some of them, and there was more challenges in some than others. But at the end of the day, a big common theme is in those scenarios.
Go start a restaurant.
Don't. You got to make decisions. You got to learn how to make decisions, and sometimes you got to learn how to make tough decisions, and you got to deal with whatever comes from making that decision. And
I loved the restaurant. I'm going to use the era of your life.
That really is the let's call it the business that really surrounds this theme of lessons learned, because I think that's probably,
and in fairness, like, you did pretty well.
We did extremely well.
Yeah.
But it was a shit show behind the scenes, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, of course.
And it was a learning. Like, I mean, I went through 3 chefs before I even opened the restaurant. I had to fire the first chef on the spot in the kitchen a month in, and probably one of the scariest experiences I had, because he was in my face and threatening me, and there's a lot of other stuff going on. Labor board experiences with all that, and a whole series of things. And then outside of that, it's about managing people and servers, your whole staff, and dealing with staff that are in relationships together. It never ends, and you're in a business where you're very fine margins. So you talk about money and business and cash flow and saving and investing, and that industry has it all. I have massive respect for anyone in the hospitality and restaurant space, food and beverage space, because that is not an easy space to be in. And I learned that the hard way, but so thankful for family, friends, the people, the support around there to help kind of get through some of those challenging times. And we ended up, it was a short run in that space for me, but but at the end of the day, it was successful and the did well. And
you're one of few restaurants that I'm aware of that made money actually in
the first year.
And
that restaurant had a historical. It hadn't made money for I don't know how many years, I'm very thankful that was able to do that, but that did not come easy. there was more challenges, experiences, whatever you want to call them, throughout there just that talk about learning how to make decisions, that firing process, and even the hiring process of building that team out. That was something else.
Yeah, firing is never easy. I think if it is easy, it's like, man, like, I don't know, that takes a really odd person.
And I had, without going into too many details, I had more than enough beyond reasons to fire this chef. More than enough. And even given all of those extreme reasons that I had to rightfully let him go, it was still extremely difficult to do. Like you're very difficult.
You feel like you're ruining somebody's life.
Honestly.
No, I don't think it should be easy. If it's easy, there's something wrong with
agree.
You know?
I agree.
So like, even if it's somebody that, like in your case, is totally wronged you, the business, you name it, it shouldn't be easy to do. I don't think. It's interesting, like that experience. Has that changed the way you approached like your future, like your endeavors, like since then, like the businesses you've gotten into and the business you created since
I think so. And I think it goes back to that word of intention. I think that's a common theme here, because so I look at those experiences and those businesses, and as an entrepreneur, you have a hard time saying no to new opportunities, right? Because we're always looking for new opportunities. And I think as you start to go through some of those, you then start to be more intentional of, okay, what actually kind of businesses or teams do I want to build and be a part of, or industries or whatnot. And so absolutely, from that perspective, you have to do it before you learn what you don't want to do and what you do want to do, and put yourself in those situations. And that's how you learn. But it's also how you figure out what it is you actually still do want to do and where your passions lies. I truly believe. So from that perspective, yes, those have then shaped how I've moved forward in terms of making decisions, really more closely evaluating potential opportunities instead of just saying, yeah, I'll do it, I'll figure it out. Like the restaurant example. I've never worked in a restaurant before. I was never
that was the best
server or a dish, and like nothing. But then the opportunity presented itself, and I was like, sure, how hard could it be? I'll try it. I'll go to go. It's business. I'll make it work. And thankfully we did, but along the way it was a challenge. Now,
your product was really good.
I
can attest to that. I tried. It was really good.
I appreciate it. Yeah. But no, it's funny because now if an opportunity comes in front, it's like, you're not just, or at least I don't think I would just say yes. It's going to be, okay, from these learned experiences, what's important here? I understand a little bit more about what my passion is, the type of work I want to do, and evaluating opportunities. Even if it is potentially a lucrative opportunity financially, again, still that wouldn't drive the decision-making process for me at today's day and age, whereas, a few years ago probably would have for me.
Yeah.
So it's funny how that evolves and changes too.
Yeah. I found the same thing. I mean, I think that, my failures along the way, and frankly, like my failures have been way bigger than if your failure is like a restaurant that we made a little bit of money on, it's like, well, yeah, my failures.
There's been other failures too, but yeah.
But I've been able to like frame them as like, you kind of take those and again, Sam will say it's like, well, turn it around and monetize the experience. And it doesn't mean it, again, it's not a money thing. It's more like turn that into like take whatever you learn from that and turn it into a benefit somewhere down the road. And that's always what I've tried to do. Like, and I think that like, as like we flat out, like I went into a business last year or a year and a half ago, and ended up being an absolute like shit show, to use your words, almost from day one, basically. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of reasons, and a lot of unforeseen things, like quite literally, the seller of the business died during the mid-process, and it's like, so anyway, for all these reasons, things didn't work out. And I learned a lot of the same things you're talking about from that. It's like, hey, there's things that didn't work. There's things that we need to look out for. There's things that we need to, like, so when we go into the next situation, we'll be better. We'll be more prepared. We'll
And those things, I truly believe that things happen for a reason. I truly do. And, those, experiences happen for a reason. So you would learn those things so that when that next one comes along, you are so much in a better position to capitalize on it and make it a success. And so I think having that positive and optimistic outlook on all of those experiences is crucial. It's absolutely crucial.
Well, I see, like, what I found was, like, man, I see why people get crushed by this and they're like, I'm out. I'm done. Because it's like, that
could have easily happened.
That would have been the more comfortable decision to make. The harder decision to make is like, no, like, I'm going to continue on. I'm going to continue to do other things or do even this or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's an interesting mentality. So, are you a goal setter?
I'm not.
Not?
I never have been, and I don't know why. I have tried to, and I don't know. I have never been a goal setter.
Interesting, because you are so organized, and you're.
I know that's why it makes no sense. I don't know why I'm not, but I would say, like, one of my greatest strengths is, like, organizational. I'm very organized, and I cannot sit down and write goals. I just can't.
Weird.
And I know
thought that's like, goal setting is really hard. Like, that's
and maybe I haven't put the proper intention into it, but I have never been a goal setter. Part of me just doesn't. I think when I think about goals, I know this is completely wrong, but one of the things that comes to mind when I think about goals is almost feeling locked in. And I don't know why I feel that way or if it's the right feeling or not. But when I think about setting goals, I think then, okay, I'm locked into those. What if something else comes up, or what if something changes? Or sure, you can rewrite your goals and whatever. But I don't know, that feeling of being locked into something in terms of setting goals is, and again, that's probably a bad thing. But when I think of goal setting, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
That's an interesting viewpoint. I wonder if it's like you might need to just give yourself permission to be flexible. Like,
could be,
Yeah.
And being more intentional about knowing that when I set them.
Yeah.
But the other thing I think is whenever I've tried to set goals, the thing for me is a lot of times I kind of forget about them and I don't revisit them. And I think that's part of the onus on me is if I was going to do it, I'd have to be very intentional about being top of mind to what those goals are and reevaluating them. And I don't know. I've never thought of been a goal setting person. I just never have.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm a bit surprised by that, but like at the same time, your explanation makes sense to me. I think goal setting is really, really hard. Like actually a lot of the work we're doing now, whether it's in like coaching, advisors or working with clients and so on, is like actually guiding them on how to set goals. But it's easy to say how to do it. It's a lot harder to actually do it. I also think it's hard today. Like, so I'll tell you my process is like I always, it has been anyway, to start with like my 10-year goal. And I list that out, like what I want to be in 10 years and what I want to accomplish, etc. And then I break that back down to 5 years. So in order to accomplish 10, what I need to do in 5, and then 3 and 1 and so forth. More recently, so 2 parts to this. What I have found is the 10-year goal, it's really hard to set long-term goals. Because what you think, I think there's that saying, it's like, well, you think you can do 10 or whatever. It's easier. Anyway, I found that I accomplished my 10-year goals in 3 to 5 years probably, But like I often overestimate what I can do in 1 year, And so what I found is like, and more recently is setting a 10-year goal. And I do this every year, like around this time, I just did this a couple weeks ago, was I was writing down my 10-year goals and then working backwards. And I was like, the 10-year goal, I had like a block, in my head. And it's like, and I've never really encountered that until last year was harder. And this year I was like, I almost had a block. I'm like,
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think what it is that things are moving so much faster now, and we're moving so much faster.
Yeah.
Like it's not that I can't see where I want to go. I can see it. But I'm like having a hard time pinpointing like what's 10 years. I don't know. Like I think I can do this in 5. I think I can do this in 3. So and then we'll keep doing more, And I think part of that is always just iterating more and exponential, like getting more exponential with things.
So when you set a goal, do you make sure it's measurable? Or will you set goals more like that are just visions of where you want to get to? Or do you make sure every single goal that you set is measurable?
Yeah, so I try to make them measurable in that, or I try to like so I always start with like, what's the grand vision of it all? And then how will you know if you've accomplished that is one of the questions I ask, or what can you measure? And tracking is where like we'll measure along the way. Like some things would be like, oh, I really want to buy this building at this point down the road. And okay, well, that's easily measurable. You either do it or you don't. You know? But some of them are more like, oh, I want to be recognized as like in terms of a brand. I want to be the brand to be recognized as this across North America. Blah blah blah. Well, how are you going to measure that? Well, here's how we think we'll measure it, and so on. So sometimes the measuring is harder than others, but yeah, what I found is that the 10 years is harder, and so I've actually like steered away from the 10-year. Still having that vision. I think vision is always important.
And I would say that, and similar to me, I might not be a goal setter, but vision for me is important. That long-term perspective of essentially where you want to get to. But so I would agree, vision is important. So what are you trying to do now? 5 years, 3 years, 1 year?
Yeah, so I focused more heavily on 1 and 3 years, whereas those used to be like my almost afterthoughts, because it was like you just kind of like break it backwards. Yeah, now it's like, now I'm actually emphasizing those more and focusing on 1, 3. Now 5 years I still like to look at, because actually it's a little bit easier to think about like, okay, where wouldn't we be? But like to the point, like everybody's talking about AI. Like, you know, AI in the last 6 months has changed the way I've thought about a lot of things in terms of like how we do things and what's potentially possible.
Sure.
And so that's a case in point of like, man, things are moving fast, and I don't see any of that slowing down.
No.
Honestly. I think that's just speeding up.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about all these things too, because I think the way that we can elevate the human experience and what we do, and anything that we do, is just, it's getting another leg up. And there's some dangerous aspects of all of this stuff for sure.
As there is with everything.
Yeah. Like, but if you focus on what the potential impacts on a positive way are. I mean, I don't know. I'm very excited about all of it.
I am too. I think it's going to continue to reshape how things are done, how humans think, how humans operate, and really how the world moves forward. I really do. And that's just purely, whether it be AI or technology in general, I think it's shaping the way in which we live, work, play, everything.
Yeah.
So, and it's only going to keep changing, and it's changing fast, evolving fast.
I think it plays, like, in this conversation of like what wealth and freedom is, I actually think it could be a massive contributor to more people
I would agree.
achieving that. And that's what we need to use it for, is that, you know? And so from that perspective, I'm very, very excited about it. And I think for the right people that are open-minded about it, you're going to be able to accomplish so much more. Like, you know, I was just listening to this TED Talk, actually, for that matter, where I'm literally a few minutes into it. I was just listening to the car earlier today, and they talked about how they're doing this research, and it's like medical research, and they've literally saved 1 billion hours from all the people that would have worked on this certain project. It's like because there's X many hundreds of people or whatever it is working on one project. And now they've been able to do this with AI tools within minutes.
Wow, isn't that wild?
Hours. But they've saved 1 billion hours, what they estimated, of human work time.
Wow.
That happened like a few months ago. So you think about that, like what the possibilities are of like adding billions and billions and billions of hours on top of what you're already capable of doing in certain fields. It's like, wow, like what was possible in 10 years, now maybe it just became possible in 1 year,
right?
Or
less.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's just it. You gotta embrace technology. I think a lot of people are scared to, but if you use it the right way, for the right reasons, and embrace it properly, then you can't use it to just completely replace something you're doing. I don't believe. But if you use it to support what you're trying to do and embrace it and optimize things with it, then it's a game changer. And I think it's that mindset of how we use technology that's really important, not just.
I think that's the bigger innovation.
Agreed.
I think the human side of this is actually the biggest innovation in the next few decades.
100% agree. It's how we interact with and use the technology, the power that.
Because we haven't been good at that in the last little while. Like social media is a prime example. I think social media right now, amazing tools.
Yeah.
We are net zero, or we're net negative on social media right now. I think it's caused arguably slightly more harm than it has good to this
I would agree.
point,
I would agree.
You know?
100%.
And there's way too many people focusing on absolutely the wrong things in life because of social media.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, okay, great tool, amazing tool, still has so much potential. but we haven't used it right.
Yeah. Well, you even look at school and universities and about.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a part of that next big conversation. Is we can't say you can't go use AI to help write papers.
No.
Like you can't. But at the same time, I think there's that piece in education where it's about we have to use it to embrace it, but it's about how do we use it, right? You can't just have someone go say, oh, I'm just going to put the question in there and just copy paste whatever ChatGPT spits out and submit that as my assignment or my essay or whatever. But it's about you have to use it, but it's about how we use it, not using it to replace what you're set out to do, not replace it in a lazy perspective of just saying, oh, this is going to just do my work for me. I'm going to go do other things. And that's one thing that, so the course that I teach for the introduction to entrepreneurship, more for the science and engineering students at U of M is I always say to them in the first few classes, I encourage you to use AI. This is an entrepreneurship class, use it, but use it in the right way. And I actually walk through examples of here's how I think you should use it when it comes to helping you get into that creative space and get ideas sparking and use it to as kind of your employee, your friend, as sounding board. And I think you're 100% right. It's about how we're going to use that technology and leverage it and use it properly. And I think the education space, the school space is going to be one of the most interesting things to see how that evolves and how universities and schools and classrooms embrace technology. Because I think the initial scare was, oh no.
Yeah.
The universities are like, what do we do? AI is everyone's going to be plagiarizing everything. But I think the mindset set is quickly shifting and needs to shift even more in terms of, okay, this is the future and we need it. Yeah. How do we properly teach and embrace it so that people still become more educated and we advance society to that way where it's being used properly?
Yeah. I think that's actually so interesting because it's like, universities had such an archaic view over it initially. Yeah. And because they went back to, it's like, oh, well, people are plagiarizing. Yeah. And that has to shift, because here's the thing, you can't stop it.
No.
Like you can't say like, oh, we're gonna block this out. Like, Hollywood's going through this, like, it's like, we're just not gonna use it. We're gonna like shun it. We're gonna like whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Somebody else is gonna do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're gonna do things that are way better than you because of it. So
they're gonna move faster. They're gonna be more efficient, more effective, and they're gonna beat you.
If you don't embrace it, you're out of business. I agree. You might as well shut the doors. So thinking about where you think your freedom will go in the future, or what you think it will be and what you want to do to achieve it. Yeah. What mindset shifts do you think you might need to take in order to accomplish that?
It's a good question.
Mm-hmm. I know. That's why I asked it.
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I think what you said earlier about being more intentional with your time is a piece of it. But to be honest, I don't know.
That's kind of part of it, though, right?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those where over time you as you learn more, and I think I'm at that life stage where I just turned 30, and it's I love my work. I work a lot. I'm passionate about it, and I think that might change in terms of more things coming into my life as I get older. But yeah, what do I need to do to be more free? I think it's just about being more intentional with time. And I think for me, when I think about my work, I never want to lose the passion I have for my work. And I think for me, as I'm speaking out loud here, it's about if I ever get to that stage where I'm not really loving what I'm doing and it's feeling like work, then I think I've lost freedom. I've lost wealth. So I think for me, what do I have to do to create more of it is making sure that I absolutely love what I do. And that impact piece is I can feel good about the work that I'm doing. And I don't know, that's what comes to my mind initially. But the short answer is I don't know. I don't know how that might change.
So it's I love that answer, actually, because I think that's actually an important concept in wealth as well. It's like, if you're living that life of true wealth, like you're enjoying what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying it, then you're right, it's restricting that freedom. There's a whole bunch of constraints that could be out there. I mean, there's certainly financial constraints. Those are actually the easier ones to overcome, I think. But there's like these mental constraints that we create for ourselves. There's societal constraints. There's all of these things. There's all these different pressures. But, you, again, I have the benefit of knowing you. So I know that your involvement in your businesses and your passion for them, but also your passion for the community and the time you give back. I mean, we were literally just at an event last night. I'll say honoring you partially. in your tenure as the chair of the young associates here. And so like, I obviously know that stuff's important too. And I would imagine, and I won't put words in your mouth, but I kind of will, is that if that stuff was removed from you, that would also be a restriction on your freedom.
I would agree, 100%. No, and that's really important. That's really important. And it's funny because after last night, I'm literally right now in that space of as much as, that was a phenomenal experience and I'm so glad that I did it. It's about, okay, what can I do next? Where does that time lead to next? And I'm in that phase of figuring out what that looks like. Coming off of last night, which is an exciting, I think, stage to be in terms of thought process. And you're absolutely right, though. That community piece, I think, especially here in Manitoba, and you look at the incredible community we have and the leaders that we have, it's that community piece is really important for a lot of people, and it's really important for me too, to support our future leaders and give back however we can. And that give back, that's a loaded word, because that could mean so many different things for different people, right, in terms of how we choose to.
Somebody said it's easy to give money. Maybe Paul Subery said that. I can't remember.
Anyone can write a check, but what do you say? Anyone can write a check, but
it's something about time, like actually showing up and getting your hands dirty.
That's right. Right.
But that's what I think about too. It's we all have to write checks too. Like, that's important. But actually getting your hands dirty,
and making a difference in your acts and your conversations with people, even just through small, simple ways. But that community piece is so important, and it's important to me.
So so you just turned 30 not that long ago. If you could go back to, would there be any advice you'd give, like, your, like, I don't know, I mean, let's go back to 20, like your 20, 25-year-old self, would there be any advice you give? Or for any of the 20 to 25-year-olds out there that you would say are on a similar journey as you, or thinking about it?
I think I would just go to that same comment of make sure you love what you do. I think if that's the one thing that I've truly, really learned, is you got to love what you do, because that's what's going to make you happy in terms of work. And if you don't love what you do, then you're not going to be happy. You're not going to put in the effort. I think that's truly a big piece of it in terms of what I would go back and maybe not say that would be different, because I've always loved that, but what I would reinforce into my younger self would be make choices and do things that you're truly going to love to do and that you're passionate about, because then the work comes easy. You want to put in the extra hours and grind things out and make things happen. But so I think it would go back to that passion piece of just making sure you love what you do. And if there's any other advice to share to those kind of in that early to mid 20s range, it would be that resilience piece. I think of making sure that with everything that you do take on and that you're intentional about, is whether they work or not, that resilience piece is so important. And that's where I've learned, as we talked about earlier, some of those biggest lessons, and having the resilience to get through some of those tougher times will only make us stronger. And I've seen that pay off in dividends from what I've learned. And I think that would be really what I would share, the passion piece and the resilience piece.
Yeah, I like it. You know what I'd share to my younger self? Would be think less about the destination, think more about the journey.
I like that.
And the main reason for that is, as I've kind of gone along, I realized that actually the only time you ever get to the destination is death.
Yeah, because it keeps changing, right?
It keeps changing. Yeah. So it's like quite literally, that's death.
Yeah.
So you better start enjoying, or you better think about enjoying, and to your point of do what you love.
Yeah.
Like, you better enjoy the ride, because that is actually the entire piece.
Well, it goes by fast.
And it goes by fast.
Yeah.
My grandma used to ask me, are you optimistic about the future? She used to ask me, so she's the one who grew up in depression area, are you optimistic? And I used to tell her, and this is true, I would say all the time, I'm actually never been more optimistic. I think the world is a better place, but I also think that we're making it better, and so I tell her that continually. But it reminded me of actually what you said, was like how lucky we are, and this was a conversation I had with her one time, is that we're fortunate because of the people that have worked really hard before us, and this is a community piece as well. Like, this is why we all owe it back. But we're fortunate that we get the opportunity to choose to do what we love, and we can actually seek out that opportunity. And we live in this great country that affords us that opportunity. Most people, anyway, here, I'd say, if you're willing to work for it, you can find it. I would say that for a lot of our parents, they didn't necessarily grow up in that opportunity. Our grandparents, had
they didn't
way
have the
less
same
of that.
choices.
No. So we actually have that choice today, and we're lucky for that. But I think to your point, that also gives us this opportunity to live a life of freedom that maybe previous generations never had that same opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree.
So,
I would agree.
So we're lucky for that. The last thing I'm going to ask you is there anything else, any resources or anything else that you would share with other people that have helped you to kind of understand this more about yourself? Like whether it's books, podcasts, whatever.
I'm not a big book and podcast person. Never have been. Mm-hmm. One book though that always sticks out to me, business book. It's Peter Thiel's 0 to 1.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic book. I do enjoy or did enjoy the kind of the biographies and stories of entrepreneurs and kind of like Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, great book.
Yeah.
So some of those, but I've never been a big podcaster or book listener. Honestly, the biggest thing that I would say in terms of resources are people.
Yeah.
It would be the importance of surrounding yourself around people that you love, that relate to you, that think like you, and that whole ideology of try and be the dumbest person in the room, always be open to learning, but surround yourself around people that help lift you up, and I think that's so important, and that's been one of the biggest things to me. And credit to you, you've been a mentor and one of those people in my life that has been a big piece of my journey too. And so just the importance of resources, of understanding people and your circle, and it doesn't need to be, I think the other thing that I've learned, it doesn't need to be a massive circle, right? But the people that you surround yourself, I think, are such important for anyone's growth, and the resources to continue learning professionally and personally.
I thought you'd say something like that because so you've taught me something actually as well, which is mainly that mentorship works both ways, and I can easily say I've learned more from you than you probably have ever learned from me, and so I'm grateful for that. But I'm not going to pump your tires too much because
you already did, and it's on audio.
It's on record.
I'm going to need a copy of that.
But there's one thing that I've admired about you from probably the moment I met you is that you have absolutely lived what you just said, which is you've surrounded yourself with all of these great people.
Appreciate
and you also, whether or not you would say this or not, I can see this, is that you have this way of making people want for you to win. And I think that's not always easy, but it's it's something that I think that everybody should want to be in that place where you surround yourself with people and they literally want you to succeed in everything. So credit to you, my friend.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You've had some great mentors along the way, and I've seen that. I've seen the people around you, and so you've done a fantastic job in that. And you probably, I agree. You can seek it out in books, but there's so many great people here, and one of the things that, again, I'd say I'd learned from you and have learned from some others as well is that you should never be afraid to ask and go just strike a conversation. And especially in Winnipeg, people are willing to do it.
It's the place to do it.
Doesn't matter what their role is, how high they are up and whatever.
We have a incredibly unique community here, and it's so powerful to see how willing some of our top leaders and community philanthropists even are, how willing they are to sit down with anyone and have a conversation. We are extremely lucky and fortunate here in this city to have the community that we do.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, I think that's a good note to end on. Little Winnipeg love. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
This is
real
fun,
pleasure. Appreciate it.
Everybody stay tuned for the next one because we've got more great guests coming up. But Josh, thanks so much. This has been fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it.